right, we're going to go ahead and get started. The way we're going to work this is a very casual conversation, and when we say conversation, it really is a Q&A more than anything. My name is Adam Zemke. I served in the legislature for 6 years and was engaged in the conversation around this issue during that time period. And I'm here just to help out a good friend tonight, Katie Scott, who's one of our county commissioners, and has served as a leader on this issue since she joined the board just a few short months ago, I guess it was. Yes. Lots happened in a few months. So we're going to kick it off to Katie to just do a quick overview. As many of you probably are aware with regard to this issue, the dioxane plume has no legislative boundaries, right? It's going to creep wherever it's going to creep, and the fact that our districts are drawn a particular way means nothing when it comes to this issue. This really is an environmental issue for every level of legislative government in the county, and the county commission in particular has a unique role in this aspect because it's the largest local body of government in the county that we have, and our highest local body of government in the county that we have. So we're going to take it over to Commissioner Katie Scott, and if you have a question, just raise your hand and I will run the mic to you. You can ask anything you want, and we'll go from there. Thanks.
Hi, so thank you for coming. Thank you very much, Adam, for introducing me. I'm really happy to be here and happy to see all of you here to talk about this too. As Adam mentioned, I've only been on the commission now since January, newly elected to that job. And what I quickly realized, and that I realized before, was that this Gelman dioxane plume, a great majority of it goes under County District 9. Really, the wells with the highest hits are coming our way, and it's encroaching further and further across that district. And people are really wanting to find a solution. So I've been doing a lot of work trying to learn about the dioxane plume, talking to a lot of people who've been involved in it for years, doing a lot of dusting off my chemistry from nursing school and even reading organic chemistry journals. It has been something else. And so what I want to do is try to find a final best solution. I am trying to go at this in a very rigorous, methodical way so that the community can have a solution that we know that these are the steps that are going to be taken. As a part of that, as I said, I've been talking to other people. In my other job, I am an ICU nurse. And so this is going to sound sort of morbid and dire, but when I have a patient in the ICU in the morning, I create this multifaceted plan. From the patient gets better and goes home, or the other outcome in the ICU really is the patient could die. And what I want to do is have that patient get better and go home. So I have a bunch of steps that I form really quickly in the morning about what I'm going to do to make that patient get better and go home. That's the kind of plan I want to try to form about Gelman. All of these multifaceted steps so the Gelman plume gets better and goes home out of our city. And so I don't want to propose to you here tonight that I have all the answers. I certainly don't have all of the answers now at all. There are a lot of people who've been doing this work for years. But when I'm talking to all the people involved in what's going on with this dioxane plume, the people I haven't heard from are the people in the community themselves. So now the conversation has come down to a discussion about whether we're going to continue to try to get a consent judgment about this event, about the plume, or whether we'll pursue Superfund or do some variation of both. This is a decision that impacts everybody in the community, and so what I wanted to do is hear from you tonight. So I hate sitting at this desk behind here and feeling like I'm separated from you, but you're gonna see me furiously taking notes when you have comments that you wanna share. I would really like to do more listening tonight than talking. You have enough time to listen to me talk in the future. So this is really about listening to you, hearing your questions that I may not know the answers to, but I will be writing them down to try to follow up with you, follow up with constituents about that, and marking your concerns about what's happening. So that's enough of hearing my voice. let's go forward, and who would like to start with a comment or question or concern? Don't be shy. That's why you're here.
I'll kick off the first one.
Oh, good.
Not as a resident of your district, but
Okay.
as a concerned citizen.
All right, thanks.
What are the couple of options that are being put forward, and can you describe kind of the advantages and drawbacks of each in a general sense, just so folks can get some direction?
So one of the things right now is that we're still in a lawsuit. There are the parties to the lawsuit are Washtenaw County, Ann Arbor City, Scioto Township, and the Huron River Watershed Council. And one of the things we're trying to do is create a new consent judgment on the best science that we have available right now that would have the former Gelman, now Danaher, thank you, clean this mess up. And so that's one of the options that we're going down at this point. The other option is to ask the federal government, the EPA, to come in and declare this site a Superfund site, put it on the national priorities list, and then have EPA clean up that site. There are also people who I think we could maybe work for trying to create a consent judgment and look at Superfund at the same time. All of them have pros and cons. Certainly, the fact that there's already been work being done with the current consent judgment, and that's happening there. EPA, people have concerns about EPA, about the speed with which that might happen, the likelihood of being placed on the national priorities list. Those are some of the concerns at stake. One of the things that I'm trying to do here too is to make sure that all of the people involved in the lawsuit are working together. So I had this meeting, one of the reasons I asked for this too, was to make sure that I heard from you in advance of our working session at the county commission next week. So June 6th, all of the parties to the lawsuit and other municipalities will be there meeting together to try to come up with a strategic plan. That was something I really pushed for and I really wanted to happen because we have to act in solidarity with each other if we're going to create a plan. So I'm going to talk to all of these other people, and again, then that's the main reason why I want to be here, to listen to you. Thanks, Adam. I see a question or comment.
I don't need that.
Sure. Others may.
It's dangerous to give me a microphone.
I'm going to do karaoke later. You can join me.
Forgive me for not standing. I'll follow this for a long time. I'm frustrated and beyond angry at our government locally for not having dealt with this before it's hit our watershed here to get into our drinking water. That was our fear 30 years ago, and here we are still talking about it. I've been to many of these meetings. I want to know what are your obstacles where me as a private citizen, person one, what can one person do to help move this along more quickly, and why isn't 0 good enough? It's not just dioxane, now we have PFAS.
Yeah.
So I filter my water at home, but I'm out in the world drinking water from the drinking fountain here, restaurants when I go, where are my kids, where are they drinking water from? I can control the water that's in my house, but I can't control it everywhere. And I'm not sure I trust our government to give us clean water, given what's happening around the state in Flint and so on. So what can one citizen do, short of stalking somebody and harassing them? There seems to be a whole body that we need to address. What can one citizen do to help move this a solution along, whatever it is, whatever solution it is?
Susan, I don't know that I have a really great answer for that question, other than being here. Being here is one of those things that you can do. Once we come up with what our strategic plan is and let the community know that strategic plan, you can hold us to task on that, right? So you can make sure that we're doing what we need to. And then we're going to need your help with whatever we do to make sure that you're writing the letters to the people who have offices higher than us, to make sure you're holding their feet to the fire also about what's happening. If we look for federal EPA Superfund, we're going to have to count on Congresswoman Dingell a lot. I know that she is a a real friend to this district. She is very involved, and we'll have to make sure we continue to talk to the Congresswoman about that to get her continued push to the EPA to make that difference. I don't know what I can tell you about not trusting the government entirely. Now I'm part of it. I want you to be able to trust me. I think you can. And I know that I'll continue to work for that. In terms of coming to zero, I think that that's a difficult thing to try to think we're going to get the dioxane all the way down to zero at this point, based on the things that I've read. So there's a risk that you can, of 1 in 100,000 risk of developing cancer with the exposure to the dioxane. And the EPA doesn't have a limit per se, or the federal government doesn't have a limit per se, like the state of Michigan does. They think the accepted level, and Roger or Dan can correct me, is 3.5 parts per billion is what the federal government has. Is that right? Dan? Approximately. And they'll say that that's safe. For me, what a solution means in terms of the dioxane plume then is that we take that water to 3.5 or below to keep that, to make sure that the water that we're getting is safe then. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. If you also could tell me, so I had the advantage of knowing Susan, but if you could tell me your name also, that would be great, thanks.
Hello, I'm Jerry Barr. Thank you for holding this listening session this evening. My question is, if all efforts began today, not for containment, but for actual cleanup, all efforts without regard to money or without regard to the energy, all resources are thrown at this for cleanup, how long would it take?
Like if we had like a dream world,
Yeah.
I think it would take all of our lifetimes. That's my understanding from what I have heard from people when I have been listening to people. I see some people saying no and some people saying yes. There are clearly a lot of opinions about this. From the reading that I have done, I think it will take our lifetime and our children's lifetime. And possibly even past that. I think this is a problem that this community is going to be dealing with for years. We don't know where the aquifers go, how deep they go, the flow of them. That's a lot of theoretical things that is beyond me from where we know that. But I think it is a problem that will be with us for many years.
But the plume continues to grow.
Yes. The plume continues to grow, and my concern is that the plume continues to grow and it gets closer and closer to Barton Pond, which is where we get our drinking water from. And when it gets to a certain point, the plume is going to move faster because it's going to move down a hill. And so that's a concern as well. Another concern is about the pump and treat that's being done at the site itself, and it dumps back into Honey Creek, which is upstream of Barton Pond, and if we don't have that water treated adequately at the site itself, it's just being fed into the river anyway. And one of my concerns about this is that this isn't just a Washtenaw County problem. This is not a County District 9 problem. This is not a Washtenaw County problem. If we don't take care of this sooner rather than later, it's going to be a Southeast Michigan problem because the Huron River it goes all through the bottom of the state. And so we have to come up with a strategic plan to have the plume, to kind of make that plume not expanding anymore.
Commissioner Scott, first off, thank you for the courtesy of doing this tonight. This is above and beyond the call of duty. We deeply appreciate it. It's nice to come in with an open mind.
Thank you.
My name is James DeMoore, and in November 2016, I was vice chair of the Sierra Club here on Valley Group. I'm still an officer within the organization. But our organization, along with Ann Arbor Township and Stour Township, got the ball rolling to petition the USC EPA to declare, for preliminary assessment, to declare the Gelman Plume a Superfund site. You know, the plume's been growing, what's been discussed recently. Here's what hasn't worked. Under consent judgment, we have a prohibition zone.
Right.
And the strategy of the state has been traditionally for dilution and dispersion. That isn't working. Consent judgment is not using best practices. Certainly from what I've seen, and there are people who better address and say these arguments than I, that would tell you that they aren't using best practices and it's not working. I think, and yes, there's been a change in government in both on the federal and the state level. We have, I'll be blunt, a not so good president, a not so good federal administration. And last November, I am being nonpartisan. We have, I think, a governor who's much more responsive, and maybe a state agency that's maybe starting to turn around. Nonetheless, the state has certain resources. The federal resources has considerably more, and certainly more powers that are available. The federal government can have a responsible plan for cleanup, whereas the MDQ position simply is just to have it at a certain level. It can demand cleanup. Furthermore, we have a responsible party in Danaher Corporation that has the funds to clean up the plume. I certainly, I still maintain that the county and along with the city should join with the townships and the Sierra Club in pursuing their Superfund strategy. That doesn't mean not involving the state. But it certainly means that the federal government can work with the state government in enforcement. So those are my 2 cents or a quarter, however you want to put it.
Thank you. I think that some of what I've heard too is that sometimes, and there's questions about this too, sometimes the EPA will come back to the state government and ask the state government to do that work. And I agree with you that that we definitely have somebody more friendly in Lansing to this position now than we had in the past. I'm not going to make any bones about being partisan. I'm up here as a Democrat elected to office. I worry about what the federal government and the EPA and how it is at the federal level right now, and have concerns about that. A lot of those concerns, when I've talked to people, have said that that's probably not a concern based on what the EPA mission is. I've spent a considerable amount of time at the EPA website itself looking at the mission of the EPA, which still seems to be in line with what we would want done here for cleanup. But I do have concerns about an EPA that has now loosened restrictions on, say, dumping mercury into rivers next to coal plants, that how much are they going to take serious a dioxane concern here in Washtenaw County? People tell me that that's not a concern. I still have that concern, but I'm trying to learn more to understand whether that's legitimate or not. Adam, did you hand the mic?
Yes, we have a gentleman here.
My name is Donald Drew Roberts. I was born and raised here in Ann Arbor. And at this stage, I want to thank the public officials for sponsoring this. And that's where I'm going to end that at. I don't have any more thanks for anybody, especially politicians, whether they're Republicans, Independents, or Democrats, or just want to be activists. When I was a kid, there was fish jumping out of the water, there was ducks, geese, foxes, raccoons, dragonflies. None of that no more. There's not even no flies around. So from then to now, there's some untrustworthy, diabolical public plotting that's been going on. And these lawsuits haven't worked. And one of my imaginary, visionary solutions is an ad hoc Ann Arbor steering committee that gets first notice on any of these viable plans, such as the EPA. I don't know how that's going to work. Michigan, whatever you want to call that. I don't know how that's going to work. It hasn't worked. And Nestlé is still doing a good job to make things don't work. So I'm interested in seeing some public people that's, well, for one thing, we're not using all the resources that we have available. We got this big fat U of M. We got students running around doing student things in which the real students could be helping us handle this. Because I don't see none of the politicians able, and from what I'm understanding about some of these students, they're already there at a high level. And I think we got to think outside the box. And when I say that, why hasn't Gilman been arrested?
He's dead.
Well, they're hair to it. You know what I'm saying? We're spending money from the public when it should be on the private enterprises that have benefited from this. EPA, Michigan, where's Gelman and all his buddies that gave him supplies and all that stuff? So that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
I mean, I think the point is though too, that you're right. Like we want to see people who have polluted like this have a responsibility to our community ultimately. And that's what I think part of the frustration all of us has. We haven't seen them have that responsibility to our community, and that's enormously frustrating. Like Donald said, I will tell you, I remember growing up and looking, like on hot summer days, I grew up by the Rouge River, and thinking like, why, like I just wanted to swim in the river, and like there was a little lake by our house, and I just thought like, oh, in the good old days when people could swim in this river and swim in that lake, but it was so highly polluted, we couldn't do that. My friends and I went in the river anyway, and I came home and my mother was like, I can't believe your legs aren't glowing. And so that was so, things have changed since then. This summer, I went to the Huron River and swam off the Bandamere dock in the Huron River with my kid, which is something I would not have done when I was here as an undergraduate student in the early 90s. And it was great. We swam across the Huron River, and I thought, this is fantastic. I would like to see things continue to improve that way and not go backwards. I want the rivers to be clean so we can go swimming in the summer when it's hot and go down and see all the wildlife there. And I want the drinking water that comes into our house not feeling like it's going to poison. And I want the people who are responsible for that. There's no more Gelman anymore, but there is Danaher, and they make billions of dollars still doing dental implants and other things like that. They have the money to clean this up. And I do think they should be held responsible. It is not right to have done this to our community and not take the responsibility to pay to clean it up. Susan.
So to piggyback on that, I agree with the gentleman who said, why isn't Gelman in jail? I'd love to see somebody in jail. I felt many somebody should have been in jail about Flint. So my question then is, Gelman caused this problem that is costing billions of dollars to fix over several generations. Is a component of your solution, whatever we decide to do, can it include at least local regulations for all of the future Gelmans? So we don't have to, tar and feather them and run them out on a rail, so that we can hold them responsible and accountable, learning this mistake of how we couldn't, as a community, put people in jail. What can we do going forward to hold these corporations more responsible than what our federal government or our state government has been unable to do? Is there any local solution that we can? We certainly don't want industry to not be here, but we want responsible industry who's not going to pollute our air or our water.
Yeah.
What regulations can we tighten or put in place so that this doesn't happen? Because my grandkids, what are they going to, is there going to be a Gelman in their future? What can we do to stop that?
That's a great question, and I am always wanting to figure out what we can do locally more to have things like this not happen again. There is, for example, we couldn't even get plastic bags banned, right? So we are limited because of what happens in Lansing and what happens in DC about what we can do in this community. I might ask Adam to just take the mic back for a minute and talk about that Death Star bill, where we cannot enact a lot of local things that we want to. I'd like to see local environmental, we're very progressive here. I'd love to see local restrictions. I'd love to have more rights for people that want to be in labor. I'd like to see prevailing wage not be gone in this community. But what happened is we have a lot of control about what we can do locally from the state government. Adam, do you just want to talk about that?
Yeah, there's definitely, and I do want to first just quickly acknowledge there are some other officials from other levels of government here. So we have Kathy Griswold and Ian Bannister from the Ann Arbor City Council, obviously a very important level of government when it comes to this conversation. Alicia Brayback, another commissioner from the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, and State Senator Jeff Irwin, who served with me in the State House. Actually, I'm going to kick since he's in office,
yes.
I'm going to kick the mic over to him and he can answer this question for you.
Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you, Senator Irwin.
Sure. Well, I wasn't there when that quote-unquote Death Star bill was debated, but I was there when the plastic bag ban was debated. And putting it on the shelf for just a second, I think there are some ways to work around that I'd be happy to talk to any of the commissioners that want to talk about that. But there has been a full court press in Lansing on local control when and if local control might impinge upon the interests of big business. And we saw that with the plastic bag ban that really came at the behest of the retailers. We saw that when there were bans on local minimum wage policies. There were restrictions on communities' ability to engage in community benefit agreements with their developers. Those are the ones that stick out really, really big time to me. And of course, you saw what the legislature did last year when the citizens tried to use direct democracy to guarantee earned sick time and buttress minimum wages across the state, and the legislature took control of both of those and deep sixed them.
Yes.
So I hope that gives some flavor to what you were saying about how in Lansing some of our progressive values are values that my colleagues are trying to squelch.
Thanks. I think that too, we can see how that's worked. I mean, think about Citizens United also. I would love to hear more of these clever ideas on how we can get around things like that and continue to reflect our progressive values here in this community so things don't continue happening again. I also think it's not unironic that Kroger has decided as a national corporation that they're not going to have plastic bags anymore, that they're phasing them out. But the state isn't going to tell them they can't do that because they're a corporation. So it will be okay for them to say no plastic bags, but not for Washtenaw County. That's my cynical view right now. Thank you. Thank you, David Kiley.
Katie, can you, one thing I'm still fuzzy on is no matter who pays for it, do you have like an elevator version of what would actually likely be done because it just seems like trying to hold back the ocean. I mean, in terms of actually mitigating it.
Who pays?
Whoever pays for it. What is actually what seems to be the smartest, best way to mitigate the problem, so that we can get past it eventually?
You have to treat at the source, and then you have to pump and treat. People who have done this for far longer than me, you can tell me if that's wrong. But I think that's the crux of it. You have to really treat at the source, and you have to pump and treat. Now, I think pumping and treating in our community might be something that might be surprising to people. In my particular area, it might mean more pipes being laid and more pumping stations in our neighborhoods. Personally, I'd rather see a pumping station in my neighborhood than to continue to see Dioxane encroach upon the Huron River. But that's why I'm here, though, tonight, too, because I want to hear from people who live in this community about what they think about that. If we have to tear up streets and put in pumps and put in wells and pumping stations, What do you think about that? If it's happening on your block, if it's happening down the street from you, is that going to be okay with you?
Yes.
Yeah? Good. Are there any no's? Don't feel feared. You can say no too. That's why we're here.
Is it a temporary thing? Is it a 5-year thing? Or is it a forever thing?
Yeah, I think that, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think it's temporary, and I don't think it would be a 5-year thing. I think it would be a much longer term thing, based on what I have learned about the encroachment of the dioxane, about how far it's gone out, and how deep it might be. It's not temporary. It will definitely be something we'll be looking at long term.
And how soon could they start?
Well, that is the question of the day. And people's opinions on that are widely varied. So sometimes people think that they could start very soon because we've done a lot of the preliminary work. Others think that it will be more maybe on the range of 5 to 9 years before anything is started if EPA gets a hold of it. It is really an unknown. I feel like that I don't have a good answer for, that I'm really trying to do the research to figure out how long it might be. I'm looking at other sites to see how long it's taken for them to get to a point of where they're actually doing something. You have to think if they get to a point where they're going to create pumping stations and wells, there's going to be RFPs for those things. It's government work. And I'm sitting here as now a member of the government. Government work's never been super fast.
Slow.
Right. But nothing in this has been fast. So to me, when I'm thinking about a solution to this, I'm not necessarily thinking about the fastest solution. I want to think about what the best solution is. That's the most important thing. That we've been dealing with this for 40 years. It's not emergent in the sense that it's like sliding down the river right now. It's becoming more of an issue. But when we come up with a solution, I want it to be the best solution. I want it to be the solution that makes this the end of the discussion, that we know something's being done for sure.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here.
So I'm sorry, I came in late, but did you already say this is what's in the works as far as the plan?
Yeah, I talked about that we're looking for consent judgment now, and then we're also discussing the ideas about looking for EPA Superfund. We're having a meeting on June 6th with the interveners in the lawsuit and other people as well, a joint meeting for the county working session that will be at the old Gelman site itself. So if that's not Rich, I don't know what is. So we'll be having a discussion with all the interveners coming up. And really my fondest hope, my best hope is that we do have a solution. I did say in the beginning, as my history of an ICU, what I do in the day, my day job is an ICU nurse, and I make a plan for the whole day, and I know like if this, then that, and it's like kind of goes out, and that's what I want to do with this. That's why I've got you here to try to listen to you.
Commissioner Scott, what is the time frame if the consent agreement were the best solution? Do we have any idea?
I don't think we have an idea about that either. It's all unknowns, which is part of what makes this such a difficult question to answer, is that we don't have a time frame for if it's EPA and NPL or if we work with the consent judgment either.
So is it?
Miss, I apologize.
Oh.
We do have a few people that are.
Oh, of course, I'm sorry,
Yep.
I don't see the.
Yeah.
That's right, you're a front row sitter like me, and I don't see people in the back. I
Actually,
appreciate
I'm
it.
not.
Yeah.
This is important enough to sit in front.
I would like to make a motion for a proposal in reference to a citizen steering committee. Now that we know for a fact there's too many unknowns in the public sector, so let the citizen sector exercise its unknowns equal to your unknowns. I'm saying that there's resources available on this planet Earth. I don't know where they're at, but they definitely are undeveloped as we speak. And I'm not going for this ever or a lifetime situation. This was a bourgeois problem and it's going to take an anti-bourgeois solution. And what goes along with that is, let's put some liens on some of these corporates' property and make them fight it out to do or not do. I'm saying, with all these unknowns, we might as well try some unknowns ourselves. One of the unknowns that I would like to try out, or see the citizens try out, is do what the Michigan Attorney General is doing. She put out a general call all over the world to help Michigan on the peas in the game, in the water. So I'm thinking, why can't we put out a general call right here in Ann Arbor on not only this issue, but the fracking issue is just as worse as the Gelman issue, because they use a lot of water in fracking before the fracking, and then the liquid after the fracking has the same effects as the dioxane. So either way, we're losing in more layers than just the one that we're working on. So that's why I'm saying, with all these unknowns, give the citizens a chance to exercise some of their unknowns.
Sir.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hi.
George Hoffman. First one of these I went to was about 18 years ago, a little after when I first moved in to the area. It was run by the DEQ, and not being aware of anything in Michigan, I could pretty quickly see the DEQ's response to this was to stall. I think the official terminology is they're not here to clean up, they're here to mitigate. My question is, to what extent is the DEQ still in the equation, and to what degree can they still stall?
The DEQ is part of the equation with the lawsuit. And I think everybody, I'm not going to say that. The DEQ is still part of the equation with the lawsuit. The DEQ gets taken out of the equation maybe if we look for US EPA, but not necessarily, because the US EPA might turn it around back to DEQ again. Now DEQ is Eagle. I know, I see Dan saying no. He says no. Other people I've talked to have said that could be the case. So somewhere in there, it's another big maybe. I mean, I feel horrible, like just saying like maybe to everything. But I think that I would be remiss if I told you there was a definitive thing, because based on all of the reading and the work that I've been doing, I don't feel really confident in telling you a definitive on that. I feel like it's been 18 years since you first came to one of these meetings, and here we are still discussing that. It makes my stomach hurt. But that's one of the reasons why I really want to come up with this plan. Like I said, like this plan where we know if this, then this, if that, then that. And we have a bunch of different directions that we can go, so we are clear what the direction is. So we're not sitting here in 18 years saying, like, what are we doing? We know that in 18 years, we went down, these paths, and that's where we are right now. So that's why this is being done. It's time to end this. So we're not sitting here again in 18 years having the same exact discussion. We have to come up with a definitive plan, and that's what I'm hoping the discussion on June 6th will be, is the start of creating that definitive plan with all the parties involved. Yes, thank you.
Realistically, if this started 30 or 40 years ago, and 18 years ago these same meetings were happening, and the discussion was relatively the same, and the DEQ proves over and over again that they're going to stall and they're not going to do anything. And Gelman and then Paul and now Danaher prove absolutely over and over again that they're going to do the least possible that they can do. I mean, even the best solution may not be containment and it may not be cleanup, but nobody's doing the best solution. So, I mean, I don't mean to sound like a jerk, but why wouldn't we be sitting here in 18 years having exactly the same discussion? Why wouldn't we?
I mean, we very well might be. I mean, we're one group of people trying to deal with a situation that's been going on for 40 years. I'm hoping that we can create enough solidarity of people involved that we won't be sitting here dealing with this in 18 years. Part of the reason that we're here now with these issues with DEQ2 is that the science has changed. What we know about dioxane has changed too. What we know about safe levels have changed. So the target has been moving in a sense in that way. The consent judgments that we previously had didn't cover our new science. So I think people were going at this with the best of intentions. I don't think anybody who's ever done this before has been trying not to solve it, but I'm hopeful that we're not like here in 18 years because we've created those trajectories and plans. You definitely don't sound, your question is the same as mine about how we won't be sitting here in 18 years having the same conversation. And maybe what that means is that we try a new tech. Maybe that's what the push for the EPA Superfund is that that's something we haven't done yet. So maybe that's a solution. I will tell you candidly, one of my concerns about asking EPA to come in is if EPA says no, and then where are we? And then we have nothing. We have nothing to negotiate with Gelman about at that point anymore. So I know people might think, no, that's what I'm thinking at this point. I am very concerned about that.
Why is that?
If they say no, because then how do we continue? We are arguing with the same people we've been arguing with, and then we will be sitting here in 18 years. I mean, I guess the only thing you can do is ask. You know, it's better to ask and be told no, I guess, than not to ask at all.
Now we can ask the next administration.
Yeah.
And the next
I am
administration.
not opposed to continuing to try and try and try. People in this audience who are friends of mine will know that I'm not one to easily give up. I'm like the honey badger.
Hi, Commissioner. Thank you for being here. My name is Tammy. My question is about the Superfund designation. So the way I understand it now, if we want to sell our house, we can sell our house. Once you're designated a Superfund and you're cleaned up, then you can sell your house as residential again. But until you're cleaned up, you have that Superfund designation, you can't. And they bulldoze your house and you become a shopping mall.
I don't think that's true. You have to disclose that you be a super fund, but the house doesn't have to be bulldozed and become a mall. There have been a few studies out there that show that having Superfund designation may actually help your property value because it shows that something is being done rather than nothing. And I don't think that's true that you cannot sell your house while you're Superfund. I hear that concern. I am a single parent and my house is 3 blocks right now within the plume. And I always joke that my house is my retirement fund because that's not really a joke, it really is. And so I don't want the value of my house to drop that much either. So that's definitely a concern and something I've been looking into. It does look like there's an answer back here from Dan McNell, who, if you've been following this discussion, you know how indebted we are to Dan for even being here to talk about this dioxane plume right now.
Yeah, Kate, you remember that Michael Burkhoff of the US EPA at the last stakeholder meeting spoke to this, and he said that if this becomes a Superfund site, that only the Gelman property, the former Gelman property, would be the Superfund site, not any part of the city of Ann Arbor. So as it relates to your property, ma'am, that would not be considered part of the Superfund site.
Thank you, Dan.
We've got a number of folks. We're going to keep going.
Kathy Griswold, and I just want to address a question. Why won't we be here in 18 years? We won't be here in 18 years because we are so fortunate right now. We have Roger Rail, we have Dan Bicknell, we have Carr, we have Debbie Dingle working on this. We have a critical mass, and now is the time to move forward. We have lawyers working on this, and We don't know what's going to happen from the consent decree, and we're going to continue down that path. But it may, even if we get a good judgment, Gelman may appeal it. And so it's my belief that we need to be trying all possible paths. And I heard someone say, I think it was Adam, a full court press. Maybe it was, we need to get up every morning and say, enough is enough, full court press, let's make it happen.
Thank you, Kathy. I totally agree. I want to tell you that, like Kathy, I don't think that we'll be sitting here. I am so hopeful that we won't be sitting here in the same way in 18 years, because I think what we've seen that is a little bit different is this willingness for all of the parties to come and work together to create this solution. That is that we are all wanting to be together to create something, and that nobody is taking any more of a lead than others. That's what that meeting on June 6th is about, that we come together and we show that we're united, and that's new. And that's why we won't be here in 18 years. I do think that we have a critical mass of people who are willing to push this, that want to see that done. I am very heartened by our discussions at the county level about people that we want to get this taken care of and have a definitive plan going forward. I know the city feels the same way. I know Scioto Township feels that. I know all of you sitting here feel that way, and that's why you're here.
I just wanted to answer the question about resale value of your home. I'm a real estate broker, and I've been doing that for more than 30 years here. I've been to many meetings that Roger has had over time. And when the Gelman thing first broke, I did help clients sell their homes in Scioto Township in the shadow of Gelman properties. And I did try to sell homes and did successfully do so for clients who were in the area right off of Dexter Road who weren't yet hooked up to city water. And it meant a significant loss in the value of their home. There were people who just packed up and moved and then said, sell my home for me. I don't care what you sell it for. I'm not gonna live there. And they took a significant hit on the value of their home. So we did still sell homes. The solution, as the homes were getting hooked up to city water, it was obviously easier to sell them then because they didn't have private wells. But the solution we found in the meantime was water systems that were guaranteed to remove the dioxane in the house. So your water coming in if you had a well. And that was an essential piece. So that was technology. And that is something maybe our government officials can do as we have concerns about water. What does it cost? At that time, it was about $5,000 or $6,000 to put in an extra filtration system beyond your water softener, what else you had. And that helped us be able to sell homes that had a private well that was impacted by dioxane, but it could be filtered to that house. So that's what it cost people at that time to get their homes sold. And did it eliminate some buyers? Yes, but it was still, people were still able to sell their homes.
Hi, thanks for coming. This has been great information. My name is Tom Eagle. I live on 7th Street by West Park. My question is, you mentioned a couple of things that you said you can treat it at the source. Is there still an active source for dioxane?
Yeah, the source at the Gelman site.
Currently emitting dioxane right now as we speak.
I don't think that it's emitting dioxane. I think the dioxane central source is there and it leaches out from there. Yeah. Yes.
The other question was, you mentioned the EPA being a long-term solution. Do we have a sense for how much time we do have before it reaches our water?
1.7 feet a month. Is that right? I'll look for those.
I guess in years.
A year. 1.7 feet a day.
So in years, like how much time do we have to go to the EPA and all that stuff?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
It's already
As far as reaching our main water source.
It already has.
It already has, they've shut down 2 wells.
Yeah, it's in the aquifer now. So the EPA, what they class right now, I know that sounds like, it hasn't reached Barton Pond, but it's in the aquifer itself. And so the EPA does say that where the dioxane is right now is in a class 1 aquifer, which is drinking water. So they acknowledge that it already has impacted us. It hasn't gotten to Barton Pond where we pull the water from at this point. I'm not sure in terms of years, but how long it gets there before there. Like if we think it travels 1.7 feet a day, I could do some math, but I'm not that quick at math.
Not in that
It's
direction.
already here.
Not in that direction.
Not that fast in that direction.
Okay.
As
Not
far
that
as
fast.
we know.
Not that fast in that direction, as far as we know. Another vague answer for you.
I'm Francine, and I first went to a meeting probably 30 years ago in Rogerville. I can't believe you're still arguing the same thing with the same people. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
But I had a couple questions. I came in a little bit late, so I hope that you haven't already answered these. One is, who actually makes the decision whether it goes to become a Superfund site or not? And the other question is, if it does, then does that, I had heard from somebody that makes it then illegal for us to do anything on a local level, that once we turn it over, we give up all control and are just at the mercy of whenever the Superfund site gets affected or gets treated. So I'm just curious about that.
So who makes the decision right now is that what we need is the governor to send a letter that says that she thinks that this should be put on the Superfund site. And to do that, we need to ask her. So ultimately, I think that's what I'm saying. The intervening parties in the lawsuit need to come to a decision together to ask the governor together, if that's what we decide, that we need that letter. And then the governor sends that letter to the EPA, and then the EPA makes that decision. Second question, I already forgot it. Can you tell me again?
If we do that,
Yes.
then are we not allowed to do anything on a local level? We're just at the mercy of whenever they
Is it
decide
either
to
or?
come and address it?
I think that it is an either or. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is what some of the concern that I have heard when I've been talking to people has been, is that we give up any control that we have over that situation if we do ask for EPA Superfund. The EPA will involve the community in a series of conversations that they'll have. There's a grant that they give to have conversations with the community, but we do relinquish control at the point that it becomes an EPA Superfund site.
And is there,
Yes.
the person who argued against this with me was saying that, it's possible it could be 10 years before they even address anything at all.
That is the question. So some people definitively say, no, that will not be the case, that it will be much quicker if EPA comes in. And then there are other people who say, yes, that is very possible. It could be at least 10 years while they study things and look at solutions and try to come up with plans before anything is done. This is part of the difficulty in thinking about making this decision and thinking about the fact that control is relinquished. It is not easy for somebody who likes a little bit of control like me to think that that's what we would be doing.
And once that's done, there's no going back. You can't say it's been 10 years, but forget it, we're doing it ourselves now. Not that we have.
I don't know the answer to that, so I'm going to write that question down and see if we can can we backtrack out of being on the NPL. My suspicion is no, but I don't know that. That's just guessing.
I think, Ann, would you like to?
Yes, I just I got answers for some of the council-related questions. For Donald, your question about a citizens committee, we do have our environmental commission, and that meets on June 27 at 7 p.m. We meet monthly, the fourth Saturday of every month. And because of the lawsuit, we haven't had a whole lot to talk about, in relation to this. But that is our citizens committee, and so you all can apply to serve on boards and commissions and get on the environmental commission over time as openings come up. And that is where we focus on climate action. So this is environment, climate, they're kind of related for sure. In regard to Susan's thing about water filters, we do. Brian Stiglitz has generally said we don't need a water filter, that what they have at the water treatment plant is far superior to what we can buy at home. However, he has just started, he's our director of the water treatment plant. He has just started a monthly Water Matters newsletter. It just had its inaugural issue. You can get it online, or there's hard copies up at City Hall. And he has reached out to all the council members and said he wants to sit down with us and hear what you all are asking us. So I've got a list, you know, water filters and more participation and any other suggestions you have. In regards to just a tidbit on that bit about what can the city do to make people, polluters pay and stuff, we did do that little action lately where no 2-cycle leaf blowers downtown, so polluting our local air, but I don't think we can stretch it to making polluters from way past pay. And the last little tidbit was we are going to finally post at the canoe liveries and down by the river the water quality as the most recent. I don't think it's going to be digital, but there will be information right at the water recreation areas for what the water quality is as most current as we have for data.
Like on a dry erase board?
I hope
Like
not.
a
We'll
daily?
see. I'd like digital, but
When I lived in Ireland, I briefly worked for the Ireland Stock Exchange, and this was in 1994, and everything was still on a chalkboard in 94 that they would get up and erase things with. That's what I'm imagining happening down by the river.
So, Commissioner Scott, just so that I know many of us in this room are kind of speaking some inside baseball here, just so everybody is aware, could you talk about just who the interveners are?
The interveners in the lawsuit are Washtenaw County, Ann Arbor City, Scioto Township, and the Huron River Watershed Council. Those are the 4 interveners in the current lawsuit that we have right now. To get to that place itself was also a fight.
Yeah.
So it's been a fight all along. So
What is the legal authority that that intervener body has as a group in terms of the lawsuit, but also in terms of this decision?
I don't know if I understand that question. I'm sorry, Adam.
What is so those are the interveners in the lawsuit?
Yes.
So they're legally authorized to push forward on the
Push forward on that suit. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of the process for the EPA request, if that was the route that folks decided to go forward with, what is who is the governmental body that pushes forward with that? You said the governor has to make the request.
The governor has to make the request. Any one of those governing bodies could make that request at any time. It is my contention that will be a stronger request if we do it together as all the interveners, and that you don't just have one of those entities acting on their own asking for EPA involvement. It would not be probably taken as strongly as if you have every one of those entities asking for EPA involvement. It will be easier to say no, I think, if it was just one of them asking for that. We have been asked to come up with a plan and come together with solidarity in purpose, also from Congresswoman Debbie Dingell herself, who is willing to push this on a federal level, but she wants to know that we're all united in the plan going forward, hence the meeting that the county will be having on June 6th to begin that discussion of how we can make sure that we're together in purpose.
And just to that point, we do have Katie Citus from
Yes.
Councilwoman Dingell's office here.
Thank you, Katie.
As well.
Hi.
Just a quick question. Do you know what the court case number is on that?
I do not. Somebody in here absolutely does.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody? Well, I was wrong.
It's a very long number, it starts with C.
It's a great question. I feel like I should know it. Wait, somebody's gonna look it up, we'll tell you.
This is also a really good plug for signing in.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of questions that are going to be answered over time here. And so if you have questions, and Commissioner Scott is taking questions, obviously, council members are taking questions as well. it is really important that we be able to get you answers to those questions, so make sure that you have.
Yeah, if you sign in, that will be great, because what I would really like to do is to follow up to this meeting with an email when I find out questions, primarily this question about can we backtrack off of the NPL list if we don't like how things are going. That's it. Do you know the answer to that, Katie?
I have like a little bit of clarity on this, and
Okay.
correct me, Roger, if I'm wrong. I don't think we can backtrack off the NPL list. We can keep doing what we're doing right now while they're investigating and while they're moving forward.
Yes.
Once we're on the NPL list and once they're moving forward in the actual, like the plan that they've determined, then we're kind of, my understanding, and I want to clarify that like that is my understanding based on discussions we've had, but we're kind of locked into that. But if it takes them 6 months to do that investigation, then we can keep moving
Or
forward.
10 years.
Or 10 years. We can keep moving forward in that time period with what's going on right now. At that point, once the power shift has happened, any actions that any of the individual players would take would be individual actions, and it would be like a community cleanup, not like a government run action. That's my understanding, and just based on conversations that I've been privy to.
Yeah, I think that was mostly my understanding. Like if we, as part of this new lawsuit, if there is a consent judgment, that consent judgment would stay in place while there is investigation about going on to the NPL, and before any action would be taken by the EPA, that consent judgment and the actions decided as part of that would continue until EPA decided what they were going to do.
Until something you start saying.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you mind saying what those initials, MPL or whatever it is?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a nurse thing, and I hated it when I started being a nurse. NPL is National Priority List. The National Priority List.
It's synonymous with Superfund.
Superfund, NPL.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's just helpful for
Yes.
people that don't
Yeah.
know the language.
Yes, I think I said it at the start, and then I just started saying NPL. So you have to be on the National Priority List, and that means that you're in the Superfund. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Commissioner Scott, you said that as this continues, it is not just a problem for local, but it will spread throughout southeast Michigan. Right now, the interveners, 3 out of the 4, in fact, are fairly local. Are there plans at all to invite others to be part of the interveners in the lawsuit?
Becoming interveners in the lawsuit itself was difficult and required a lot of legal action itself. I don't think there's plans right now to have other entities join that lawsuit. When you have, it's especially helpful, I think, that we have Washtenaw County as part of that lawsuit, since we do represent the whole county, and we have every single person on the Washtenaw County Commission is concerned about this. So the 2 commissioners whose districts it impacts the most right now are me and Jason Maciaski, but we also have Commissioner Sue Shank, who represents a fair amount of Ann Arbor Township, who is very involved in this and very passionate about this. So the places where the plume is and where the plume is headed, those commissioners are on board, ready to represent those communities as well. I do think that this does have a potential to impact all of southeast Michigan. I do think it is a broader issue than the people who are involved in the lawsuit itself right now. I am extremely happy Washtenaw County is part of that lawsuit, so we can have a broader scope of citizens involved in that decision about what happens.
I had a question and maybe a couple of comments.
Great.
The question is basically, what's Plan B? We've been talking about, in fact, you mentioned the ultimate solution might not occur in our lifetimes or even in our children's lifetimes. But certainly something else is going to change in the meantime. So what is Plan B? And the comment that falls into that is we're, with respect to everybody, but we're tending to flip-flop because dioxane is a 2-part problem in Washtenaw County. it's very close to the people that live outside of the city, without city water, on well water. What is an answer for the city of Ann Arbor is not an answer for them. And so when a question's asked, I think we need to force ourselves a bit to answer both questions. We can't answer the question about a filter and then turn around and say, but that's not a problem in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
That's two questions and two answers, and frankly, sitting here, I'm just a bit confused by it. And I imagine some other people are. So one is Plan B, but then finally, a comment is, given that it's such a real problem in the townships, where they can't fall back and say, Ann Arbor's got it covered, because they're not on city water.
Yeah.
But to me, it is, and I'd like the county to respond, why cannot a citizen in Washtenaw County who's not, why can't they have the county test their well water for dioxane? The county has repeatedly refused to do so, and I've done some calling on my own to a couple of labs in the state that will test for it, and it's a $300, maybe $400 test. And yet Washtenaw County will not test for dioxane. They'll give you an E. coli test, but they won't give you a dioxane. So first is Plan B, and then I'll let you decide how to answer the others.
I'm trying to look at people who might know the answer to that. We do not test for dioxane in well water, if people have that.
We test in the areas around the edges of the plume, but we don't test everywhere in the county. We work with DEQ to partner for them, and DEQ does pay for those tests.
Do we test around anywhere in the prohibition zone?
There should be nobody drinking well water in the prohibition zone.
Okay. Okay. So did you hear that? If there should be nobody on well water, there's a prohibition zone. I have a map up here too, that if you want to take a look at that, have you seen that map that shows the prohibition zone? So nobody in that prohibition zone should be drinking well water. I wrote down that question to come up with more answers about it. I think it's a really good question because people are concerned, and so we should be thinking about that.
It has nothing to do with the prohibition zone. I've seen the map too that shows the plume.
Yeah.
Okay, so the real question is, outside of the prohibition zone, but within the boundaries of the known plume,
yes,
can a citizen ask the county to test their well for dioxane?
Yes.
We certainly take any suggestions and any concerns, and we take that into account when we're doing our dioxide sampling with the DEQ.
That's not the answer. With all respect.
That has not been your experience.
Well, the point is, I would guess that there's a few people in this room that are a little nervous.
Yes.
I just sat in a meeting a while ago with a single mother and 2 children, and she wanted to take a sample to Washtenaw County tomorrow because she's worried about her children. Okay?
Yes. Yes. I understand that. I mean, that's part of the reason I'm sitting here is because I understand that concern, and I don't want anybody to have to feel like they're
It should
right.
be on demand.
Yeah. I will do more looking into that question. I don't know entirely where that is. If you are in the prohibition zone, you are in the plume, but I understand what you're saying. I'm going to find more answers to that. If you would follow up with me when we leave so I make sure that I have specifically your email to get back to you, that would be fantastic. In terms of a plan B, I agree with you that there needs to be plan B, C, D, E, F, G going on so we know what can happen. Part of what I'd like to see when we create a plan to be done is that there is a clear plan if the testing wells hit a certain number, what that means for then the pumping. It has to speed up at that point. You know, as you go out in the plume and the wells, you're seeing where those numbers hit, and the pumping increased when you hit a certain number at some of those well testings. That's some of the plans that I would like to jointly create with all of the people involved, including all of you in this room. I mean, it's hearing your concerns. This is why I did this listening session, to hear this concern specifically that you're talking about people being concerned about their wells and being able to have that water tested. That I'm hearing that concern, and I want to try to come up with a solution for that, because nobody should have to be worried about that. It's horrible to think about that if you're giving water to your children that's going to make them sick or make you sick, or that you're a single mother and something's going to happen to you and your children are going to be left with nobody. That's a horrible thing to have to worry about with something as elemental as water. And it's something we shouldn't have to worry about. And that's why we're here. That's why I'm doing this. Mr. Rail.
Yeah, I'm Roger Rail. This is my 26th year as a citizen volunteer watching over this mess. And this is the first, no applause for me, everybody here has a role. This is the first time in 25 years we have both the governor and the AG on the same side for more environmental cleanup. It was before it was flip-flop. So we have a chance to do this right. Now, for those who are concerned about this being a Superfund site, it's already a Superfund site. The scale of this is a Superfund site, just a small s. Now, who's in charge when it's a small s Superfund site? In this case, the polluter is taking the state to school on this pretty much all the time. They've in secret negotiations for 2 years, as far as we know, nothing has happened. And they can extend that and extend that and extend that, then they get to do less cleanup. They've already taken out more dioxane than they said was down there. They've taken out maybe 113,000 pounds of the 80,000 pounds was their last estimate. We don't know how much is left, but we know it's a lot.
Yeah.
We don't have enough monitoring to know how much is left. They won't do that same calculation they did twice before because they know they really don't know.
Are you talking about the source?
The amount of dioxide left in the groundwater, of the 850,000 pounds that was used, we don't know how much is left, but we know they've taken up more than the 80,000 pounds that they estimated was left. So what kind of, we're already in negative territory here. I mean, clearly there's not enough definition of what the problem is. There's a lot of solutions. Everybody wants to have quick solutions, but if you're going to throw a solution, you better know what the problem is.
Right.
And like you say, plan B, C, D, it might take that. And as far as 18 years from now, somebody better be here, because if without local involvement, without citizens, like, you know, Dan Bicknell was the single person who discovered this when he was a graduate student in 1984. What if he hadn't done that? Where were all you then? You read the paper about the sense from the government site. He took action, and he stuck with it for a year and a half. And now he's back in retirement trying to make sure the right thing happens. This is an all hands on deck that we need here. And as far as your comment about why isn't there some citizen action group to do this, we have that. We've had citizen groups that merged and morphed into the CAR group, Coalition for Action on Remediation of Dioxane, with all the concerned citizens and all the local governments. That's been going on for 13 years. But all we can do is make recommendations. A lot of those recommendations have not made it back into the EPA's review. When the EPA came in 2 years ago and did a review, we got a lot of documents that weren't readily available to the public until they got involved. I learned some things, even though all my years, from the EPA involvement just for 2 years. But curiously, none of the documents that they released had anything to do with the concerns that that CARD has been saying for 13 years. Somehow that feedback from the local community didn't make it through the DEQ to the EPA. I think when the EPA gets involved with the Superfund site, I think that channel will be more open. And I expect all of you to pay attention. And if you have some interest, if you have some expertise, if you have some wherewithal to help solve this problem. I like the comment about the university, because they're a big player in town. It's time for all the entities to get together and work together, and that's what's leading up to this June 6th meeting, so I hope you all show up for that.
What can we do as citizens? What do you suggest we do?
Well, as citizens, I always tell people to pay attention and read your daily newspaper.
What do you?
It's supposed to be a laugh.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan, for being here. I know you're covering.
But Ryan, I tell you what, Ryan.
Thank you.
Ryan, I have never had to correct any of Ryan's stories, dozens and dozens of stories.
I mean, I do want to say that we do owe Ryan a debt for continuing to cover this when other people have dropped the story,
That's right.
and that you have stayed with it, and that is how I have gotten a lot of information.
Kudos.
Yes, so
Yeah.
thank you very much.
And it's important for people to read the comments, because it used to be my role to combat and tap down any disinformation that's out there. And since the last several years, somebody will make a comment that's clearly misinformed or not fully informed. And before I can get in and tap down the disinformation, somebody's already jumped in and given the right answer. And that's what it takes for the community to know enough. There's enough knowledgeable people within the community that know the facts, know the reality, that they can help the decision makers make the right decision. So appreciate everybody being here.
Yeah, there are so many really smart people who have been covering this and working on it for so long. So continuing to read about this and read the comments, it's going to be important, because there are people who are involved who are thinking about that. I do want to make a note that I really do commend the number of volunteers who have been working on this problem for years and who have been discussing it and continuing to not let us forget about it. At a very elemental level, we need more monitoring. Like at a very elemental level, we need more monitoring. If that's the thing that's going to happen like tomorrow, that's what we need. We need more monitoring so we can understand the depth and breadth of what is going on. We do not have enough of that now to fully understand the scope of this problem. We need more definition in terms of just saying, to echo what Roger said, we need you to stay involved and stay paying attention to this. You have people who are here tonight who have been elected who are clearly passionate about thinking about this. So you have council members here, you have another commissioner here, you have Senator Irwin here. We all want to continue to hear from you. I want to hear from you about your questions, your proposed ideas about what can be done, your concerns. That's what you can do. And then I will continue to relay that to more and more people as well. This is not something I'm going to forget. I am part of this community. I live here. I also am a single mother who lives here with a child. It is very important to me that we come up with a solution. That's what you can continue to do. Yes.
Hi, my name is Susan Cebulski. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate just having public officials here who are willing to listen to residents. So my comment is, and Katie, I really appreciate you saying that you're going to focus on a plan. And it sounds like, clearly plan A is the lawsuit and plan B is pursuing the possibility of the EPA Superfund cleanup. And I want to encourage to continue to explore what plan C and plan D and plan E at the same time that this is going on. As a citizen and someone who is now within the plume because I live on Old West Side, I I personally feel that we should all be willing to step up to the table to actually contribute to this. I know I hear a lot, I read a lot, and I see residents, people saying, you know, this is not our responsibility, and that the corporation should be responsible to pay for it. But unfortunately, this is our water, and this is, I can't think of a more important priority, honestly. And so I'm really glad that I have two city council people sitting here, because they're my most direct line of communication. And I just wanted to say specifically, if we identify that, as you say, just testing and monitoring is a first priority, then city, could we please consider that as part of the budget? That seems like a priority that is above many other things. And so I just want to put it out there to the city, like, let's get that going now. If that seems like the first thing that we should do, yes, let's do that.
And
this is our water.
Clamor for that through emailing us
Yes.
at.
Yes. I just wanted, because you're here, I just wanted to say that. This is almost like the opportunity to say that to all of you who are our representatives, because this is like better than me having to write a postcard to all of you. Thank you for that. I hope that we can get going with that and not wait for the lawsuit. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. Well, I'm following that up. Is there some estimate about how much it's going to cost to clean the whole thing up?
I don't know the answer to that. As somebody who's been doing this for longer than I have an idea about an estimate about the cost.
I think we may have, sir?
Maybe, no?
Dan?
Millions, billions?
You're looking at, they had in the past estimated $50 million for a proper groundwater extraction and treatment system.
15 million.
That's not much.
So that's
50
three
million.
libraries or something.
That's
you
not
know?
much.
So I'm completely behind you, that we don't fund the libraries for 5 years.
Oh God, we're at the library.
No, but that doesn't make any sense.
Then we won't have meetings like this in 18 years.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you one of the things when you get elected to office, you realize how the budget is all consuming. But I do $50 million.
We can have a bake sale and make $50 million.
Let's do it.
Over the next
That's not a lot of money.
My first job was a pastry chef apprentice. I make some good stuff. Now, $50 million. I think that thinking about the budget and how we might monitor and test more with the budget from the city, from the county, from whoever is a good point for us to think about. I do not necessarily want to take $50 million of the money that you as taxpayers are paying to do this job when Gelman-Danaher should be paying for it.
Well,
that primarily is what I want to see.
We should have it in the suit that they
They pay us back. I love that idea. But
Let's see if the Gelman estate has $50 million.
But I want them to pay, and I just want to clarify. They pay as part of the lawsuit. They pay as part of EPA Superfund.
They pay in 20 years. They're not paying tomorrow or next year.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm worried. I live over by Getty's and Hill, and I'm worried about my property values over there, because soon enough we're not going to be able to sell our houses, because the whole city that's #1 in the country as a place to live. But this I mean, maybe I don't make sense in this, but holding out for Gilman to pay us for that and waiting for the whole town to be polluted rather than doing something now. I mean, if they've, I don't have a microphone, but you know, when they want a statue erected or the Twin Towers replaced, the World Trade Center replaced, they put a bid out, and they got all across the country people coming up with a plan and a budget and all this stuff, and they get it done. And Ann Arbor's a smart enough place that we can bid it out to the best bidder and pay the money for it and get paid back by Gilman.
That's what EPA will do.
in 20 years though. They're not gonna do it next year, and we've got a problem this year.
But 50 million ends up being 350 million in 20 years. That's the damn problem.
It's just gonna compound.
50 million now.
Yeah.
Yes,
like
it
not-
continues to compound and compound. But I think that that's what, yes, that's what that's part of Plan C, D, E, F, is to think creatively about other ways to think about this problem. Which again is like, which I'm so happy to be here to listen to people talking about alternative ways that they think this could be solved. So, I mean, that's why we're here. It's great to hear ideas like this, and then those are ideas that then we discuss, going forward. I see another.
A different question when you're ready to move on.
Okay.
So I came late, my apologies if this was asked. With respect to the drinking water, if it makes it to Barton Pond, does that mean Barton Pond can't be used? Or do we have to do something differently to the water that we don't do now because of the presence of dioxane? And if that's the case, is there any talk, like, are you negotiating with the city of Detroit to bring it, west a little more? I know Ipsy gets their water from Detroit, and are you thinking about, well, gee, let's look for something upstream on the Huron River? Is there a pond up there? Is there somewhere where we can draw a river that's west and north of it, upstream, literally, from it? Like, are those contingency plans being developed? Like, hey, what happens if it gets there? How soon can Detroit bring it in, like they brought it to Flint? Or how can we go upstream to get clean water?
So, Dan, did you want to?
Yeah, Brian Stiglitz had a presentation in our city council on this, and he's looking at an alternative treatment technology should the dioxane hit the Barton Pond. And they're also looking at bringing into Detroit city water. We're looking at both those options at this time.
That's information that I don't necessarily know either, because that's city, that would be a city plan. But those are the questions, those are the very questions that need to be asked, because what we've seen before is like, if this is a problem, we'll do something then, we don't know what. And we have to put an end to that. We have to ask all the hypothetical questions now and come up with the answers to those hypothetical questions, so if they happen, we have a plan. That is so important. We cannot do any more of this sitting back and say, well, if that happens, then we'll come up with something. We need to have those answers now, which was my point, just going back to my history or my day job as an ICU nurse. I have to think very hypothetically for my whole day about, if something happens, what am I going to do? I hope I never have to get to those hypotheticals, but I've thought about it ahead of time so I know the answer. And that's what we need to be doing when we're creating that plan. We have to come up with answers to those hypotheticals. Thank you.
So thank you very much. We're gonna start to try and be respectful of people's time. We do want to give Roger, due to his expertise on this issue, kind of one of the final last words here, and then we're gonna ask Commissioner Scott to wrap things up. I do want to just make sure that we put another plug in. If you've not signed up, not here to collect your email address to spam you. It is literally to get you the questions that you've asked and answered with proper information for anything that were not answered. So with that being said, Roger and Dan, if you want to add anything, you're more than welcome to as well.
Well, I just encourage everybody to keep paying attention. Come to the June 6th meeting. How many have been to a CARD meeting? So maybe a third of the room, half maybe. And it's important that we keep all the units together in an entity like that, because this is going to be going on for many, many decades. One person can't. We have new people coming in, new people getting elected, new employees at all different levels. They come in, they make decisions sometimes without being fully informed on what the problem is. So one of my challenges is, how do we update new people? How do we update even existing people who are very busy at work, and they keep, this is just one of their balls in the air that they're juggling. How do we make sure that there's not some bad decisions being made because of lack of good information? So again, thanks again.
Dan, want to say anything?
Okay. I
Okay.
think with that, we're going to turn it over to Commissioner Scott for the final word for this evening. Obviously, this is far from the final word on this issue.
Far from the final word on the issue. This is only the beginning of the issue. I want to say thank you very much for coming out tonight. It's finally somewhat warm outside and not raining, and you're here in this room to have this discussion. And thank you so much for coming. It is paramount to me to continue to listen to you as we go forward. I do not want to make a decision in a vacuum without input from the community. I am so happy that you're here. Please continue to reach out to me via email. I can give you my phone number. I am more than willing to meet anybody for coffee to talk about this issue and hear from you more. I feel very hopeful that we're going to go forward with all of the multifaceted plans and come up with answers to hypotheticals as we go forward. There are no easy solutions to this problem. But I really want to assure you that the people who are working on this now are so committed to trying to come up with a plan. And I know we have support on all levels, from our state representatives, from Senator Irwin, from Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, that I feel confident we're going to come up with something workable and something rigorously investigated that will work for all of us in the end. Please continue to stay in touch, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you.